Welcome. We're taking a look at some problems that could appear on the AP exam for calculus. And this next one looks a little daunting. It says the limit as h approaches 0 of the cotangent of pi over 3 plus h minus cotangent of pi over 3 all over h equals, what does that equal? Well, you might, if you saw this problem on the AP exam, you might be tempted to just move on to the next problem, skip this one, and not make an attempt to even try it. It looks like a terrible limit problem. But actually, if we take a look at the essentials that we need to work this problem, the first thing is this looks pretty similar to what we have above, and this is just the definition of the derivative. And so what we really have up above is maybe just a derivative problem. Well, since we see the cotangent in there, we'll probably need some trig identities. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. We'll need that, and we'll need to know that the cotangent of x is equal to cosine over sine. What the derivative of the sine is, it's a cosine, and what the derivative of the cosine of x is, it's minus the sine. And we'll also use the quotient rule on this. And remember, the quotient rule is the one that if you have two functions, the one divided by the other, it's low, the denominator, times the derivative of the numerator, low d high minus high d low, and you square the denominator. Okay, let's begin. And whoops, I mean to have a working pencil or pen here, and I do now. And so we could see that what we have is the limit as h approaches 0 of the cotangent, and we'll just put an x in here, x plus h minus the cotangent of x all over h. That looks just like what we have written up in our essentials, and so what we have then is the derivative of the cotangent, just the definition of the derivative of the cotangent of x. And so let's find out what the derivative of the cotangent of x is. First of all, the cotangent of x is cosine x over sine x. And you may know what the derivative of the cotangent of x is, but let's say when you're taking the AP exam, you've come up with a mental block. You cannot remember what it is, but we do have our essentials, and so the derivative of the cotangent of x would be just the derivative of the cosine of x over the sine of x, which it's equivalent to. And if we take the derivative of that, we can do that by the quotient rule. That's the reason why we put the quotient rule as one of our essentials. So it's low sine of x times the derivative of the numerator, which is minus sine of x. Then subtract or minus high, which is cosine of x, times the derivative of the denominator, which is cosine of x. And that's all over the denominator squared. So the sine squared of x, and I'll write it that way. And what's that equal to? Well, that's minus sine squared x minus cosine squared x all over sine squared x. And we can do a little factoring here. We can factor out a minus 1 out of the numerator. We'll just write it as minus and then the sine squared of x plus the cosine squared of x, just factoring out a minus 1 or a minus sign, and that's all over sine squared x. And here's where we'll use another one of our essentials, that trig identity, sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x is equal to 1. And so we found the derivative of the cotangent of x is minus 1 over sine squared of x. And many of you know that that is the same thing as the minus the cosecant squared of x, but let's just keep it in this form. And we'll copy down again our problem, which was the limit as h approaches 0 of cotangent of pi over 3 plus h minus the cotangent of pi over 3 all over h. And we've found out that this was simply the derivative, the definition of the derivative, and we found that derivative to be minus sine squared, and in this case we're going to replace x with pi over 3 because that is the value that we're looking for. Now this question would appear on the part of the test where you're allowed to use calculators. So you could look up the sine of pi over 3 on your calculator. But many of you know that that is the square root of 3 over 2. If you didn't, it might be a good idea to put the unit circle somewhere on your scratch paper as you're working through the test, the AP exam. Anyhow, we want to square the square root of 3 over 2, so we square the square root of 3, that gives us 3. We square 2, that gives us 4. So we have 1 over a negative 3/4, and that's the same thing as 1 times the reciprocal of 3/4, which is 4/3, so we get negative 4/3, which is the solution to this problem. And it turns out that what looked like a difficult limit problem was really nothing more than the definition of the derivative of the cotangent, and we could do that using a few of our basic essentials. That's it. See ya.